asking yourself and having those self check-ins of like, what really is mine here? What really is my role here? Because sometimes we don't ask ourselves that and we engulf 5 roles that aren't really ours. And then therefore fueling these imbalances and kind of these codependencies.
Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Welcome to the show, friend. I have my new best friend, Leah, here with us, and we are going to have so much fun today. We are going to talk about doing it all, having to fix everything. Oh, you can hit that when you're trying to make everything in everybody's life perfect. There's no time left for you. And how do we set those boundaries? And how do we do those things that give you space to have a life and not just be there for everyone else? And so this is going to be fabulous. I'm so excited. So we're going to get a quick word from our sponsor. When we come back, Leah, help us not fix everything and everybody. We'll be right back. Hey, since I rarely have openings in my coaching schedule, I have a new resource out there on my website. It is called the BFF Coaching Network. And I have offered a spot there for any coach that has been on the show to list their coaching. You can go out there, you can listen to their episodes, you can feel a little bit about them, and then choose a coach that will work for you. So LaraJaneLayton.com, the BFF Coaching Network. All right, we are going to have so much fun. Leah, the information about using the show notes so they can jump down there and get a hold of you. But let's talk about this because I know that, growing up and having children and wanting their lives to be perfect and sometimes overstepping in. Oh, you forgot your lunch. Okay, well, I'll bring it to you. Oh, well, they're not having the consequences because you're always there fixing it. How do we keep our kids safe, our coworkers safe, and everybody around us safe and not have to step in and do it for them?
Right. And you make such a good point because I think growing up, we're kind of either modeled or we make these rigid associations that if we are not 2 steps ahead, if we are not jumping in to fix and solve, then we're not kind. Then we're not being a good enough parent. Then we are being, selfish. And so we have these very rigid all or nothing kind of connections that we make with what is good enough. And I think that keeps us in this rut or this role where you said it yourself, we kind of find ourselves not really in the equation.
Yes. I know that was lots of times. I remember, this lunch thing was something that I had to run into. And it's like, I would ask my kids, how can you fix it? Do you have a friend you could borrow money from? How can you fix it? Instead of going, I'll be right there with it. And what are you giving your coworkers and your employees the opportunity to grow, or are we handicapping them?
And you think about it, am I supporting or am I solving? And, you think about just with our physical health, when we go to the gym, when we are training for something, we have to get repetitions in, we have to get reps in to build that self-trust, to build that stamina. But that's the same thing that happens, with other things in problem solving throughout life. So when we're constantly coming in and rescuing, maybe our children, our coworkers, or, oh, let me take that off your plate. Let me go ahead and send that email. Let me go ahead and bring my child's lunch again. They're not feeling the discomfort. They're not getting in those repetitions to problem solve, to think through things. And that right there, we're kind of robbing people of these opportunities to build resilience and self-trust and problem solve. And that, in a way, creates these micro-codependencies.
That sounds scary. I don't want anybody dependent on me. I think appreciative, thankful, and I think sometimes we don't think of it as dependency. We think of it as just being helpful. But that would be like going to the gym and taking someone with you and go, Will you lift that 100 pounds for me? I need 5 reps for 30 times. Okay, I'm going home stronger. It doesn't work. And sometimes we take that away from our people what we want to help grow.
Right. And you can see sometimes where that feeds into that rigid association we have is that if I don't show up, if I don't, solve this, fix this, be 3 steps ahead and kind of rid this discomfort from my child, my coworker, my partner, then I'm not being a good enough person. I'm not caretaking enough. And you can see that sometimes it's like compassion disguised as control because we have this desire sometimes where if you're okay, then I can be okay. So let me make sure that you're not going to lose it. You're going to have everything in line. You're feeling good because if you are good and I'm helping kind of dictate that, then I can maybe feel good. So there's
Mhm.
sometimes this self-serving, kind of drive interwoven in our connection.
And sometimes we get this, oh man, I had to work 12 hours yesterday and I don't have any time off. And we wear that overburdenedness as a badge of honor. Like, oh, and my kids have this, and my parents now need this. And I'm just so burnt out. Like, you are being great. And we're kind of raised to feel that way, that overdoing for everybody else's honor. How do we actually kind of let go of some of that stuff and not all of a sudden feel like we're not good enough because we're not helping? That's huge.
It is huge, and it is. It's that, it's glamorized, that if we are constantly on the go, if we're stressed, if we're this or that, it's confirming and I think reconfirming falsely that we're doing it right. We are doing enough. See, we're a good employee. See, we're a good partner. See, we're a good daughter. We're a good, all these things. It's kind of keeping us in line there. But I think one of the best things to start to think about is when you're in a conversation, when you're in exchange with someone, whether it's someone that you know very well, like in your immediate family, or it's someone that you work with, and somebody comes and presents something that they're struggling with, a hurdle, something that's creating a bit of discomfort. If you find yourself, you'll have to collect data, with this, but if you're finding yourself immediately jumping into fixing and solving mode, well, just try this, or this happened to me, or let me do this for you. You know, you're missing that step that I think many of us miss in communication, which is validation. We're missing and glossing over that moment where we can say, wow, it does sound like you've had a really hard week. Or, oh, that is a lot. Or, you know, just even making the eye contact and showing that person that you are there trying to decode the message that they're sharing with you verbally or non-verbally. We're so quick to kind of button it up, fix it, solve it so that we can feel productive, so that they can move on, and then we can feel at ease and that we did a good job. And so that fixing and solving, I think, keeps us in this state of urgency and removes the ability to truly connect and allow people to keep ownership of what they're problem solving, what they're struggling with, what they're feeling that's uncomfortable while we are there supporting.
Consequences is what keeps coming in my mind. It's when I started teaching my kids to do their own laundry or do the dishes. And I remember having one of their sweaters shrink into a doll-sized sweater, and it's like, this is the opportunity to not get angry that they screwed it up, but a lesson they will never do that again. If they get the opportunity to do it in a safe environment, when they're older, it will just be, "Oh, dang it, I forgot," instead of beating themselves up over it. And it's like, sometimes you may have to wash a dish or a pan, or it may have been faster to do it yourself. But in the long run, it's faster to have someone else have learned how to do it. And that's where in the workplace, I think we're a lot better at it, letting people learn because they're getting paid for it. And so you feel a little bit better about letting go of some of those tasks, but we still step in and save. Oh, yeah, here, let me just reformat that for you because I need it to look different. Instead of taking that moment, showing them how, and then knowing next time they're going to do a better job at it. Instead, we'll always be reformatting or redoing something. And ah, when you're the boss, sometimes it has to be your way because your team is your representation to how things are going, but you don't have to be the one doing it all. That's why we have teams.
Yeah, that is. And there's like, that was so well said because there's like two parts and two kind of, extensions of that. Because I think, again, we have to challenge that association that, like, if I don't step in, if I don't do this, am I a good boss? Am I leading my team correctly? If this is done, isn't done well, what does this say about me? We're kind of filtrating it through us. When in reality, you make such a good point that people have to have ownership and their own flavor to things. I mean, how many times have you been in a conversation, maybe with a dear friend, and they're stuck and you keep giving them this amazing advice and they look at you and they say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And they can't activate, they can't execute it. And you have the same conversation the next week. And it's like, why is this not working? And that right there is such, a cycle that many of us find ourselves in. But that person, your friend, does not have ownership. They have not added their own flavor. You have not asked enough questions of like, what do you feel like your options are? What is preventing you from taking a step? How can I support you here? You're just taking their tangled ball of yarn and trying to untangle it for them rather than keeping it with them and maybe helping them pull at a few threads.
Oh, I love that analogy, because so many times it's like, just give it to me, yeah, or here's a new ball. Yours is too messed up. Here's a new ball. And that's not theirs. I created this ball. I like this ball. So it's a little messy. I want to fix it. And when we just give them a new ball, it's not theirs. You might feel like it's the perfect solution, but you're right. They don't have the ownership in it.
Mm. And then you're forever, as the mother, as the boss, as the partner, you're forever in the, kind of the role of the structure, right? And in some ways, wonderful. But in other ways, that can become excruciatingly exhausting.
I can feel it now. It's like, people say, well, they just don't listen. No, they don't really understand. They're listening, they're hearing, and they're trying to put it in their model, their way of thinking. Because we're all different, thank goodness. Who wants to go to a store that only sells vanilla ice cream? Now, that's my favorite. It would be okay with me, but everybody else would be annoyed. So there are many ways to get something done, not just my way. Who was it that famous saying, my way or the highway?
Yeah.
It's like, I will take the highway in that case.
Right. And that I think totally speaks to that whole concept of like my way or the highway, because then I can feel an opportunity to feel okay. Right. It's just like everything has to be in line and you need to fall in line so that then I can feel relief.
Yeah, but my line, not yours.
Right.
It could be completely organized, completely doable, but not your way. My husband's really, really good at this with his employees. It's, here's what I need done, and here's how I would like to have it done. But he doesn't get in and go, you're doing it in the wrong order. No, 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 no. It's like, okay, they're not doing it my way. It's okay. I'll wait for the outcome or a
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
And not everybody has that ability to not try and micromanage every step.
Mhm. It takes a lot of emotional regulation. It takes a lot of data collection and understanding and challenging kind of those internal, associations that we have that have been around for probably decades.
Yeah, but when you allow that person their way, they like working with you. They
Mhm.
don't feel smothered. They don't feel unappreciated because it's their way. Anybody can be taught to do a certain process or a certain. I And I'm trying to think back when my last boss was very, very good at letting me do things my way, which is beautiful. But there was little tiny things that, oh, I needed this added too. It wasn't that, oh, you did it wrong. It was, could you also add this? And it was very constructive instead of destructive.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think also that shows too, your boss's level, I think, of confidence and self-connection within her,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
within themselves,
Yeah.
very much so.
Hmm.
Because the ones that aren't are the ones that have to have it. If they aren't confident, it has to be perfect because that's what they want to show. And even though and when I say perfect, there is no one perfect way. There
Hmm.
are every way. There's so many perfect ways. Like, how many times have you tied your shoe? Has it
Oh,
ever looked the same? But it worked. And it
great one.
stayed on,
Yeah.
and it didn't so it's gonna look different,
Hmm.
but it works.
Hmm. Yeah. And you can see how kind of, being in that mode, that fixer mode and serial fixing and looking for, how can I check this off? How can I search for perfection? How can I soothe myself and really, convince myself that I'm good at all these roles? That is such a recipe for cyclical exhaustion. That is such a recipe for, again, missing out on being present and really connecting in ways that I know so many of us are really, especially during times like this, are craving. There's this like loneliness sometimes that we're feeling when we may have relationships and interactions that we're constantly involved in, but we're thinking 5 steps ahead. We're ruminating or we're in the future thinking, and we're missing kind of this back and forth authentic dialogue where we're present. I feel like we're all kind of getting a little out of shape with that.
You know, the future is something we need to plan for, but we
Mhm.
don't live there.
Right.
We live in the now, and it is only a direction. It's not a command. It's not, "You have to do this." It's, "Oh, I wanna go north. Da, 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 da. Hey, wait, this doesn't feel good. I think I'm gonna go northeast." Noot. It's a direction. It's not a, "You have to stay rigid in this for the rest of your life." And so having that flexibility, that ability to say, "I have this boundary. I'm not gonna let people do this to me. I am going to respond this way." You're not gonna change the way people come in the door, but you can change the way you respond to the people going through the door. It can be, "Hey, wait, I need you to leave." Or it could be, "Could you change?" You know, they're little things, but until we own us, we're gonna get trampled on. We're gonna hit burnout. We are going to be over fixing. And
Mhm.
my granddaughter goes to a school that it's an Actum Academy, and the teachers aren't teachers; they're guides,
Mhm.
and they are. If they have a question, the guides are not allowed to answer.
Mhm.
They're like, "How can you find that problem? How would you solve it? Where could you look?" And I just love that process because here are these 5 to 16-year-olds are learning to think. I don't have to memorize everything. I can
Mhm.
figure it out. And there's the internet and there's books and there's all these ways. And what freedom are we teaching it? And that's the same with our employees. If they come to you and go, "Hey, da 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 da," it's like, if you could take that moment and ask them, you're giving them a growth opportunity. Like, where do you think you could find that? I would love to help you. I could tell you the answer, but I would love for you to learn how to figure it out.
Mhm.
And giving them that, you're growing the people, and the people are going to feel honored and respected And can you imagine being in a world like that? That's funny. Back before there was spell check and everything, my kids would ask my husband, "How do you spell?" And he'd say, "Look it up in the dictionary." You know,
Mhm.
because he wanted him to look, and it's like, "But I can't find it. Give me a hint." Now you can just misspell it a million times and, it will come. Oh, no, it's even better. Now you just have to say the word and it tells you.
I know.
But, it was like, learn. Where can you find that? It wasn't, "I'm gonna handicap you." It's, "How do you figure it out?"
Mhm. Yeah. And I love that you brought up just the word boundaries because I think a lot of people do misconstrue that boundaries are kind of, trying to almost change other people, and we can't do that. It's actually collecting the data of how a relationship is functioning or things that people might be doing and responding to you that you're like, "That's not feeling good. I'm not loving that." And it's really setting a boundary with how you are going to change up your responses and your behavior based on what you've noticed. And I think, in terms of talking about, just being a boss, being a leader, and thinking about, you know what, I do want to change this up. I do want to be more of a empowering leader. I am taking on too much. I am fixing. And so remember too that communicating this in a way to the people that you're leading, you're also modeling something amazing. Like if someone comes in and asks a question and you just saying and kind of showing that vulnerability as a leader, of, you know what, I've noticed that I have been jumping in too quick and not giving you an opportunity to kind of problem solve or troubleshoot some of these things. And I stepped back and thought about this, and I do think this is a bit of a disservice to you. And I'm very confident in you, and I want you to be confident in yourself. So you're going to notice that my responses to you when you ask things I normally would just either take care of for you or give you an answer. I'm going to change this up because I want you to have more ownership. And that right there is you setting a boundary, but in a way that's letting that person know that there's going to be a shift in my behavior, but it's also, I think, going to be to your benefit.
I love how articulate that was. It was communicating up front, explaining why. You
Mhm,
know, um, I doodle. I'm gonna look like I'm not paying attention. It's
mhm.
gonna bother you, but I promise I'm listening, but this is how I do it. And I did that in so many interviews because, hey, just know this is gonna happen. And it definitely, even though you told them, it still caught them by surprise. And so I love that example of taking that moment, explaining the shift so there's no surprise and they don't go, "Oh, she's mad at me. Oh, she doesn't think I can do it." I love how you made it like, I know you're capable and I'm going to quit doing this for you because you can do it. And I love that you can believe you can do it. That is like, oh,
It is. It's those I statements. I've noticed, so you're using those I statements to share because oftentimes we set these wonderful boundaries, but nobody knows that we're shifting. And then you're absolutely right. A lot of times people will then internalize. Well, what happened? Are they mad at me? Am I not doing good work? Am I gonna get fired? Is this is and it's like, we wanna prevent that. We wanna prevent anxiety around that. So it's sometimes being direct and using those I statements to prevent that because, it's like Brene Brown says, clear is kind, and we're not doing that enough. And especially when we notice that we need to change, we need to just give people a heads up, like, "You're gonna probably hear different things from me, and this is why."
I love it. I do because I am sitting here thinking of ways that I could have changed my language to better support a shift.
Yeah, it takes practice just like anything else, and sometimes it can be scary and intimidating, but I think we're ready for this. We're ready, just as a society, we're good enough for these, like, conversations that can a lot of times be ones that we shove under the rug, but I think the best formula with that is those I statements. It seems so basic, we've all heard of it, we just don't utilize that skill enough. It's like, "I've noticed." I. Once we say "you," humans, we tend to get like, "Oof," we get a little defensive,
Mhm.
right? That word "you."
Like,
We're
how do
not
you know?
Yes.
You don't know
Or
me.
you are making we get a little defensive. So I think, really practicing in any context those I statements, and it really it makes such a huge difference in conversation.
All right, let's practice this because I want to hear it again because you did it so beautifully. So if I came and go, Leah, I really, really need help. I've got a meeting I've got to get to, and I don't know where to find the information about the upcoming board meeting's agenda.
Yeah. Oh, Lord Jane. No, it does. It sounds like you're in a pinch. Um, you know what I've noticed though? I've noticed that we find ourselves in this kind of pattern a lot. And I know it might seem stressful right now, but I think that I've been, not giving you the benefit of doubt. I haven't been giving you enough practice to keep ownership of things from start to finish. And so today might seem a little stressful because I'm not just going to jump in and solve for you. But moving forward, I want you to know I trust you. I want you to know that I think you're incredibly resourceful and that you can find these things out. And I'm always here to support you.
Mm. Well, then how come you don't just tell me where it is?
If I tell you where it is, Laura Jane, I think that is also demonstrating to you that I doubt that you're able to figure out where it is. And I do think one of the skills that we've been working on, I know that, you've shared in your mid-year review, is that you want to get better at, kind of budgeting your time. And so I think making time for this, because I think we both have been selling you a bit short.
You do that so well. Even the comeback, I thought I was going to throw a loop in there. So, okay. So we've got this boundary thing, and I love the I because, you're setting it as I've noticed that I'm overdoing, not that you're coming to me too much. So you're taking that pointy finger away from it. And then, so you're setting that, you're not fixing it for them. And how much better is that person going to feel when they, oh, I found the directory. Thanks. You know, they're like, I got it.
Yeah.
Or it was in my email.
That's right, and there's a growing pain, right? There's a growing pain, but you're right. I think it tends to be empowering once they solve it, once they see it, once they make time for it, once they calculate it, whatever it is. And this we see this in children as well, right? It's like, "I did it." And I think that's what we're really, in any role, that you play is that we're really trying to empower. We're not trying to create these, like, codependent relationships that are all and fuel imbalanced relationships. It's how can we thrive together? How can I support, don't solve?
Oh, yeah. But my way's the right way. That has been a tendency that I have worked a lot on is allowing people to do it their own way. And it's challenging at first. Eventually, you realize they do it just as well.
Mhm,
It's like, I didn't need to step in there anyway.
mhm. And here's the thing, like, if we look at the psychology behind it and what happens internally with us is when we, the work that you just shared, how you're like, "I've really had to work on that." The more repetitions that you got in with kind of pausing, kind of reframing that, like, "Okay, just let them do it." Your inner critic started to trust that nothing catastrophic would happen. The more repetitions that you saw that, like, oh, that actually worked out, or wouldn't have been the way I did it, but it actually worked and they're okay and I'm okay. That inner critic that used to perk up real fast saying, like, oh, no, no, this is going to end badly. They're going to do this. You're going to do this. Are you being a good, but all that stuff, that chatter starts to get quiet because that protected part of you doesn't feel like you need it quite as much.
Yeah, I call him the bully
There you go. Mhm.
because he really, uh, in my brain, that is how he was worse than the bully on the neighborhood,
Sure.
that was always making fun of you. Your inner critic, that inner bully voice can exhaust you until you let it start trusting. And I call it turning him into your own best friend because eventually it responds like a best friend would. It's still going to warn you,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's not going to do it in a degrading, you're no good way.
That's right. We need those protective parts. Like, you're right, we don't want them to go away, and that was, a big learning I had to think I wanted my critic to go away. I hated that part of me, and I really had to learn to, like, how do I work with this part of me? How do I appreciate all the work that she's doing and soothe this part of me rather than try to continue to put Band-Aids on it, to pacify myself and distract myself? I think that's where we misstep. We think about anxious thought patterns, we think about self-sabotage and just our inner critic and all these things. And a lot of us try with desperate attempts to silence it, think something's wrong with us, when in reality, it's flipping that and reframing that to think of these as protected parts that we still need, but we also need to work with and understand and soothe so that they have a little bit of a break. They're working too hard.
Yeah, I call it silencing, but in the way that it's changing. The
Yes.
bully voice goes away. The friend voice is there for support and warning, and that's okay. I want it.
Mhm.
I want to know where I last had danger so I can watch a little carefully, but I don't have to not go.
Yeah, I like that.
Hmm. How else does overfixing show up in our lives?
I think, you think about not even in the workplace, but just in relationships. When we do, we kind of take the bait. We hear someone's discomfort. We hear the sigh in our household. We hear something and we immediately internalize and think, oh, why was I not? Why was I not on top of that? My child, this person's feeling discomfort. Does that mean that I'm not a good enough parent? I should have seen this coming. What does this say about me? Like, we're filtrating a lot of things through us and our potential deficit, which again isn't always the case. And so that's why that piece, that validation piece of, really letting that person, whether they're 5 or 55, letting them know that you are decoding or trying to decode what they're sharing, whether you agree with it or not. You're trying to tease apart the message and the emotion. Starting with that keeps you in more of the supporter role rather than being 5 steps ahead and immediately trying to fix and solve and soothe. To either confirm for yourself, see, I'm a good parent, I'm a good boss, I'm a good partner. It's like omitting that self-serving part and that urgency and validating first. And I think when you start to practice that and let people keep ownership while you're supporting, it is a game changer on your level of empowerment, your level of presence, and your ability to kind of sanction some of your energy differently. Because it's a lot of energy to fix and solve and be 5 steps ahead of everything.
Yeah, but at the same time, fixing and solving and being 5 steps ahead has got us in our executive roles. That's why
Mhm.
we're leaders. That's why we're there, is because we rose above. So, how do we balance that where we can still stay valuable,
Mhm.
yet create more leaders underneath us?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. And you think about, though, you just kind of scan some of the best leaders that you've had, some of the best managers, bosses, however you want to phrase it. You know, there comes a time where you think, wow, they're really bright. They know all the answers to all these things. That might be the case, but the ones that actually demonstrated effective listening skills, that were able to set and model healthy boundaries and their ability to take care of themselves in conjunction with kicking ass, those are the leaders that continue to grow. And you don't see 10 years after they've been in the corporate world exit stage left because they're burned out or they had a nervous breakdown. Right. And so it's really that ability to know and access when you have to, be like, access your grit, when you have to be all in, when you have to problem solve and troubleshoot. But if you're operating in that gear all the time, a lot of it is self-serving. A lot of it is, let me get all these things straight so that I can have some relief. But if you are steadily integrating that into your everyday and practicing presence, practicing pause, practicing that resilience, but recovery as well, it's sustainable.
That's a good point. I'm thinking, that rising above got you at top,
Mhm,
but it's not going to keep you there
mhm.
because you will burn out. You will exit left. You will go, I'm done, because we've seen it over and over and over again.
Mm.
that there's balance. And when we trust, that's a whole reason we have employees. That's a whole reason there's more than one person at the office because we need a team, we need a village, and one person doesn't have to do it all. And that is a key message we need to learn to give ourselves, that it is okay to not carry the world on our shoulders by ourselves. We have others around us to do it. Same within families, same within, communities. You're not alone. Take advantage in a positive way of the people around you because they grow too. When you share the load, you both get stronger. When you do it yourself, you're only serving yourself.
And that's a hard thing to swallow sometimes, that it is like there is that element of self-serving. It's like, no, 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 I'm trying to keep everyone else in line. But ultimately, again, it's sometimes compassion disguised as control. Hmm.
Ah, so
Yeah.
beautiful. How would you summarize everything we've talked about? I mean, I think we've stayed very targeted, but what is that one little summary of taking, staying in control, but not doing it all?
Yeah. I think, and this has been my motto for years that I have to practice myself is like support, don't solve. Leah, how do you still show up with compassion and, your strengths, but support, don't solve? And I think for me, whether I'm, professionally or personally, it's asking yourself and having those self check-ins of like, what really is mine here? What really is my role here? Because sometimes we don't ask ourselves that and we engulf 5 roles that aren't really ours. And then therefore feeling these imbalances and kind of these codependencies. So I think if you're going to take anything away, it's like support, don't solve. And that doesn't mean being passive. That doesn't mean just like, well, I guess I'll just let people do what they're going to do. And I guess all the things and all the work and grit that I've accessed for the last 15 years, that's not what I'm going to do anymore. No, no, no. That's your strength. That's your superpower. You need to keep that up. But be strategic in relationships and roles where you are overextending, overcompensating. Ask yourself, why? Where's the deficit internally that is keeping you in that role? And how can you shift and get in shape? Because you're going to need reps. But how can you get in shape with supporting rather than solving and giving yourself more room and adding yourself into the equation?
Support. I'm writing it down because that is really, I mean, I've put a lot of sticky notes, over the years on my monitors and stuff to remind me of things like it just is. I quit trying to label it's a bad day. No, it just is a day that's a little harder than yesterday. I'm getting through it. It's for my strength. So this is a great one. Support, don't solve. As just a reminder, because if it's on your monitor and someone's walking in your office and you look up and it reminds you right there, because you're going to be able to see it and the person, because most of us, our computer monitors are towards the door. Because if your back's towards the door, I used to have rear view mirrors. When I got stuck in that, I'd put rear view mirrors on my monitor because I didn't like people sneaking up behind me. Oh, but I love it because what a great, perfect little way to remind yourself of you got here. You do have the ability to do it, but you don't have to solve the world's problems. I love it. Hey, Leah, why don't you share a little bit more about you personally and, what your goal of helping the world is? Everybody has something they want to help the world with. Um, and how do they get a hold of you if they go, oh, I really want that Leah person in my life?
Well, thank you. My name's Leah Marone, and I'm a psychotherapist based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I also do a lot of work, boundary work, emotional intelligence work with nonprofits and corporations. So I do a lot of speaking on those topics. And my book, Serial Fixer: Break Free from the Habit of Solving Other People's Problems, It, came out in 2025, and it really speaks to a lot of these concepts, these issues. And my main, I think, goal, or way to kind of sprinkle in my little additive to hopefully help the world is to just give people, instead of just kind of these band-aids and pacifiers and these quick fixes, it's really to reframe why we are caught in these burnout cycles, why we are caught in, working so hard, but not really soaking up what we'd like to relationally. And so I really am hoping that looking at how we're showing up to interactions and relationships and what role we are playing and, shifting that can make all the difference with our energy, with our ability to be present, in the relationship with ourselves and others.
Mm, that's a beautiful mission. I love it. Okay, so the hard one. Okay, it's not hard. What is that one thing we're going to practice this week?
Ooh, the one thing that you're going to practice this week, I think first and foremost is collect data. And what I mean by that is just notice, don't judge. You don't have to do anything yet, but just notice in interactions throughout your week. If your tendency is to immediately jump in with a solution, a fix, or, kind of taking ownership, and just take data and just go from there. And you're not alone. But I think that is your task for this week, is to collect data. And that is the only way that you'll be able to make a shift if there is one that needs to happen.
Yeah. So if sit down before you leave the door, or before you jump in the car, before you shut your office door if you're working at home, it's like, what is that? What did I do today? That self-reflection. How did it go? How many problems did I have to fix? Ooh, a little bit of self-reflection. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Leah. I have totally enjoyed the conversation and how value we all have the tendency to fix because we want the world to be perfect and it's not a one-man job. So thank you for sharing how to help offload some of the burden from ourselves. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yes. Oh, friend, I am not a licensed medical or mental professional. We are here for entertainment. People have been on a road and been able to solve problems and wanted to show you how it might work for you too. So, yes, I love it. It's so exciting, but do follow your medical and advices from your doctors and therapists. I'm really thankful for this conversation because I think it brought light to some of the things going on in my life that I need to just kind of let go of. And it's nice to have a reminder. I practice it all the time, but it's a nice reminder. So thank you. So, friends, thank you for joining and stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss the next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.